Winnie. How are you today?
I'm doing great, David. It's wonderful to reconnect with you.
Yeah. Tell me where you are right now.
I'm in Washington, D.C. I bought a place on the corner of DuPont Circle, very convenient to the where I need to go on a daily basis. I work for the Eurasia Center, and we have offices on K Street.
Well, great. Well, let's start at the beginning of the Winnie
Okay,
family journey,
sure.
and then we're going to go all the way up through
Okay,
1988. People should know that you and I went to the same school. We went to Punahou School in Honolulu, Hawaii. We both graduated in the class of 1988. Um,
yes,
and we knew each other. We were aware of each other. I don't know if we hung out every day. And
right.
so, you and many other people that I went to school with over the years, I've just kind of been curious about their story that I
Yeah,
perhaps didn't pick up
sure.
during our high school years. So, why don't we start with who are the Winnies? I assume that's your
Okay.
father's side.
Right.
Where did they come from, and how did they end up in Hawaii?
Sure. My grandfather, Virgil Winnie, um, was going to school at the University of Minnesota. He had to drop out of school and started work for the railroad. Well, what happened was during the Depression, he lost his job with the railroad, and he and a friend heard there were jobs in the Pacific Northwest. So they drove out west and they got to California earlier than they anticipated. So just on the spur of the moment, my grandfather and this friend decided to get on a steamship to go out to Hawaii to visit a mutual friend of theirs that was student teaching on Maui. And my grandfather said when he arrived in the islands, he just fell in love with it and he swore if he could find a job that he would stay. And that's exactly what he did. He got a job working for Hawaiian Electric, and then was a business development rep for about 45 years. So once my grandfather got to Hawaii, um, he was married to my grandmother, and she had worked a whole year just for room and board teaching, but they couldn't afford to pay her. So 6 months later, my grandmother joined my grandfather in Hawaii, and she was a teacher, so she got a job teaching at Iolani. Then my dad was born a couple of years later, and my then during the bombing of Pearl Harbor, my grandmother took my father back to Iowa. So he lived there for about 4 or 5 years, and then went back to Hawaii after the war to reunite with my grandfather. So my father started at Punahou. I think it was like I think he started in like fourth grade. My mother was born in Aliwa North in South Africa. She was from Natal province, and she left South Africa because she wanted to work in the film industry and was going to the London School of Dramatic Art. Um, the school got her a part in some movies that were being filmed in Spain at the time, Follow the Roman Empire and Circus World. My dad was in Spain for a summer taking Spanish language classes at the University of Madrid. So my father and my mother met in this pension where my mother was staying while she was filming. They struck up a romance, and they lived together in Spain. And then when it was time to leave, come to the United States, my father recommended Hawaii.
Excellent. Well, before we get to the birth of Ralph Winnie,
Yeah,
talk about your mom a little bit more. So she's from
sure.
South Africa. I presume she
Yes.
she was white.
Yes.
Did she ever talk to you about her feelings about apartheid and how that affected her? And did it inform the conversations that you had as a family growing up?
Yeah, she was part of the reason she did leave South Africa was she also didn't want to live under apartheid. And there really weren't opportunities to resist the government at that time if you were against apartheid. When she told me a story when she was in England, she met an Indian girl, and they were both from South Africa. And, but they couldn't have never met in South Africa because of apartheid. So they made arrangements because they were both going to go back to South Africa for like Christmas vacation. So they made arrangements where my mother could come and visit the family, this woman's family. What my mother had to do, she had to get on a bus, and she had to get off at a bus stop at a certain time, and this car drove up, and the door was flung open. My mother had to dive in and lay on the floor until the car, and then the car drove them into the township where this Indian family lived. And even when they were in the township, my mother couldn't get up off the floor because she couldn't be seen by anybody until they got into the garage of where the family lived. All just because she wanted to have dinner and meet this woman's parents. My grandmother was a single parent in South Africa. My maternal grandfather was killed by a drunk driver, so my grandmother had to go back to work and was a teacher. So she taught in teacher training schools for African students. And she could have the students come to her home, but she had to write them a pass, and they would have to go to different precincts, police, and check in. Because my grandmother moved to an area where the only children my mother's age were children of Black families who were servants and other people in white households. So my mother grew up becoming fluent in Zulu and having Black friends, African friends. And as she got older, those relationships became very, very difficult to maintain. So yes, my mother, apartheid really did affect her, and she loved Hawaii because it was and people were very warm and friendly, very open. You didn't have to worry, about running afoul of the government because you're associating with someone of a different race.
Would you describe your parents as progressive for the time?
I would, I guess so. Yeah. I mean, they liked Ronald Reagan.
Okay, so let's
Yeah.
call them centrists, but they were
Yeah.
opposed to apartheid, but not
We're-
like left wing, So describe the home that you grew up in your early days. What was it like? Where was it? What were your
Well, I grew up in Kailua, 816 Pahameli Place in Enchanted Lake. And when I was very young, we always used to go out to the beach because I loved to swim. And we would spend all day at the beach. And I finally after 6 p.m. we'd have to leave, but I didn't want to get out of the water. So my dad would have to drag me kicking and screaming. And I never wore shoes. I'd be, in a suit, a t-shirt, either go barefoot or wear slippers. So I held off on getting shoes for many years. And when we finally did go and get shoes, I rebelled to the point where I took the measuring device and almost hit the guy in the back of the head because they're trying to shoe me, put the shoes on me, and it was very, very uncomfortable. I was a great swimmer at a very, very young age. I went to my mother taught me in the backyard pool because we had a pool. It was a two-story brick and white house, 5 bedroom, and she taught me to swim in the pool, and then we went to the Y, and so I could get more formal training. And normally it takes 6 months to go through all of the classes at the Y. You get these little badges. I did it all within 1 month. But unfortunately, what happened is I got ear infections and I had a retraction of the eardrum. So I could not, it got to the point where I could be in the water, but I couldn't put my head under. I couldn't get water in my ears. Otherwise, I could get a massive ear infection and I would go deaf. So that set me, I couldn't, swim anymore. I never started not to go to the beach, and then started to be more of an indoor kind of kid. So I was collecting stamps, doing a lot of reading. Um, I like to watch TV, of course, play video games. So,
Were you, Ralph,
yeah.
were you disappointed that you were no longer able to swim?
I think I was initially. So it was important for my parents to distract me with other things. And so I had pets, of course, growing up. I had a dog and cats. I had a hamster, a guinea pig. I had fish. Um, I had a turtle named Thomas. I had a um, a parakeet named Perky, and and so that took a lot of my time.
It's like
Being
a
connected
Noah's
with
Ark in
him.
the Winnie house.
Huh?
It's like a Noah's Ark in the Winnie home.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Um, and my dad had tried to teach me football, baseball, and basketball, but I just was never good. I wasn't, meant to do that. I tried baseball when I was like 7 or 8 years old, and it was okay, but I didn't have the natural talent to do that. So having pets was important because not only did I read about how to care for the animals, but I was also expected to you know, give them the food and the water and, make them part of the family. You know, when you bring an animal into your family, they're part of the family. They're not just, something that you can discard. And that's something my mother always said, that how important it was. This is like, a new family member. One of the most important things that I ever did in my life, as a child, was getting involved with the sport of wrestling. That was encouraged, I think, by Mr. Eldridge, Dave Eldridge, because at that point I was a little overweight and I needed to get involved in a sport,
At,
to,
at what point? How old were you?
well, I was 13. I was in seventh grade. So I started in wrestling at that point. Um, and the great thing about wrestling is it teaches you a lot of life skills about hard work, dedication, responsibility, showing up on time, um, setting goals, teamwork, what it means to be part of a team, how it's important to focus on your own professional growth and development, but to support all of your teammates and be there for them and wrestle them. And um, I didn't win my first match until like about a year and a half later. And I remember people were like coming up to us like, well, why are you in wrestling? You're no good. You're not winning. You're not winning. So why don't you quit? And I wasn't going to do that. I was going to work as hard as I could to start winning. I mean, if I was going to leave the sport, it's going to be on my own merits, but not just because I'm not winning a wrestling match. So my coach was, had a lot of respect for me. And if you know Dan Hartenstein, he said, I never forgot what Coach Peacock said about you. He said, you were the real champion because it didn't matter what people said. You were focused on winning your matches and you were going to be the best that you could be.
Well, let's dwell a bit longer on the earlier years.
Sure.
You say you had a five-bedroom home filled with animals of all species. Did you have
I don't know about all species, but yeah, a
did,
wide variety of different animals. Yeah.
did you have siblings?
Um, I had my mother's had a daughter from a previous marriage, so she's 11 years older than me. She really wasn't in the house when I was there. I mean, she left when I was about 7, but I do remember her a little bit. Yeah.
So after you were 7,
Yeah.
it was your two parents
And me.
in the house.
Right. Yeah.
Was the Winnie family religious at all?
My father was not, my mother was, you know, but we didn't really go to church. But My mother always had me say my prayers every night.
What do you remember your mom saying to you that had a South African inflection?
Oh, she would teach me Zulu. Munya mabili matatu manu mushlana montandatu. And then it was like Dolan Wane, I think is elbow.
So she taught you more.
Munya mabili matatu manu mushlana is 1 to 5 in Zulu.
Not a lot of Haole kids in Hawaii grew up learning Zulu, I would imagine.
No,
You might have
no,
been the only one.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Um, let's fast forward to seventh grade.
yeah,
You arrive at Punahou.
yeah,
Years seventh and eighth grade are often described by people as being somewhat awkward.
yeah,
What was the experience like for you being in seventh grade? You were a new student, and so that might have added to
yeah.
perhaps the transitional
Right.
awkwardness. But what was it like for you?
Well, it was a big change, I think, from Le Jardin, because it's a new getting to know new people. And I think one of the ways you get to know new people is being involved in sports. And that's why being joining the wrestling team, I think, was very beneficial for me because I got to know people and make friends that way. And also, I really put a lot of time into like my classes, like the French class, and I loved history. Mr. Eldridge's Hawaiiana class, I think, was very meaningful. I really enjoyed that in seventh grade. We were sitting on the tatami mats, and we were each given a Hawaiian name.
Those are some highlights. Were there any lowlights?
Well, I'm just wanting to be the best in wrestling, wanting to win that wrestling match, and that was tough because it's you're studying hard, and then you go into the practice room and you're getting your ass kicked. Sorry, but you're working hard and you want it to happen. So that's the hardest thing. I mean, because you're not the captain of the football team, or you're still kind of starting out and you're getting your feet wet, and so.
If you could summarize what the most important, let's call it intellectual breakthroughs were for you in high school, what would they be?
I think going on the European study tour was very, very beneficial. One of the things that we did was we went to Dachau, and that really kind of seared in my mind what I had been studying and learning about the Holocaust. Reading about the Diary of Anne Frank and reading about what the Holocaust was all about. To just be there at that camp and to just kind of try and visualize what must have been like for prisoners there. And I talked about my experience when I was writing my college essays, and also being able to go to different cathedrals, churches. We were in Venice, a gondola ride, going to the Hofbrauhaus in Germany.
Did you drink beer at the Hofbrauhaus in
We
Germany?
each had a little beer. We got with the parents' permission to be able to do that.
So
Yeah,
you had a little beer.
a little beer. Yeah, I think my first beer was with, if you remember, Kevin Allen, a class of '86. Um, he took me out and we went to a bar, and I had my first beer there.
In Germany?
No, no, no. This was in Hawaii, so this was a couple of years previous. But that's
You went
had
to a
my
bar in high school?
huh?
You went to a bar in high
Well,
school?
yeah, he took me to Club Bangkok, and
Yeah. What's Club Bangkok?
Club Bangkok. Well, there were women dancing, and that was my first exposure and my first beer. And when they found out that I was under 18, we all had to leave because I looked very young. And then he encouraged me to talk about it in my French class with Jack Canfield, what I did for the weekend. And I talked about it in French. And guess what? Guess what grade I got from Mr. Canfield? An A.
Well, that sounds like an all-around
Yeah.
great
So I have
experience.
to thank
You
him
got a
for that.
beer, there was
Yeah.
memorable visuals, and you got an A talking about it in French.
Right. Yeah.
It's just the winning never stops. Um, so obviously going to a place like Punahou, you get
Yeah.
resources and you have
Right.
the ability to, for example, go to Europe and
Right.
see these historic places,
Right.
including
Yeah.
places of you know tragic consequences.
Right.
Was it
Right.
can be quite powerful.
Yeah.
Um,
And it really instilled in me the desire to get involved in international work. And that's what I've been doing for the bulk of my career. You know,
yeah,
I got to, when I was in law school, I got to study Moscow State University. I studied uh, international business transactions and the Russian legal system, and then I stayed on to learn Russian language.
let's hear you introduce your legal qualifications in the Russian language.
Uh, Меня зовут Ralph Winnie. Uh, Я училец русский. Я студент-адвокат МГУ.
Excellent. I want to ask you to say the same thing in Zulu.
I can't.
You can.
No, only for I can count 1 to 5 and I know elbow. Yeah. At this point, yeah.
Um, in addition to the academic and intellectual side of high school, there's a social side to it.
Yeah.
How do you think you fit in socially in high school?
It's hard to say. I knew people of different cliques, but I was really focused on myself and what I wanted to do as far as getting good grades and doing well in wrestling. So, I enjoyed going to class and meeting people, and but I think one thing Puno teaches you, it's important to stand up for yourself and to fight, and because if you're not confident or comfortable in yourself, you can't expect other people to be comfortable or confident in you. And I've sort of taken that, into what I would say is the real world.
Did you feel like you had to stand up and fight for yourself in a social context at Punahou?
Um, Maybe there were times, I think it's just part of life. Whatever may have been said or whatever may have happened to me, in a social context is nothing I wouldn't experience in the real world, which is where I am now. And that's what I would tell people. I don't think I was part of a clique at all. I just,
Yeah, there were definitely cliques.
right, right. So,
Did you wish you were part of a clique? Did
I
that
don't
appeal
think
to
so.
you? Have
No, I
this kind of
mean,
like
yeah,
defined set of
yeah. Well, no, I mean, because I always felt like I was my own person, and that's what my mother really encouraged me, to follow my dreams
Mhm.
and to, engage with other people, enjoy other people's company and friendship and support, but definitely follow my dreams and not sacrifice, for the collective per se. If you look at the communists' belief, it's all about supporting the collective and giving up your individual rights. And I was certainly not wanting to be part of that. I was very much driven in my own internal sense, not competitive, trying to destroy anyone else's opportunities, but just focused on what I need to do to be successful, win that first wrestling match, getting good grades, so I could go to a good college.
how do you think other people perceived you?
Um, you know, I remember, I think it was like in eighth grade, we had this ethics class, and we all had to write anonymous. Uh, we had to write an anonymous note about what we thought of person A, B, C, D, or E. Okay.
By the way, I remember that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So apparently, when the comments came back about me, it was all very, very positive about what a nice person I was and always tried to help people, and that made me feel great, because that was me. That was my personality. And I think people really, when they when it was like, by themselves, or not by themselves, but when it was anonymous, they wanted to write freely about what they thought of the person they were asked to write about. And the same thing with me too. What did I think of X person or Y person? I'm not going to tell them to their face. It's easier to just write it out in that sort of setting. And I think so. I had all these nice, wonderful, positive comments. This is in eighth grade.
Great. Well, let's just go right to the end. I believe it's May 1988. We're
Yeah.
all getting ready to graduate. Presumably, you had been accepted to a college.
Yes.
What was your frame of mind at graduation? How were you feeling?
Really excited for the future, and what it would be like to live on the mainland, because I'd never done that before. At the same time, you're kind of sad because you're going to be away from your friends. But it was just a nice group bonding experience, I think, for everybody.
What have I neglected to ask you about? Is there an aspect about you, your history, your personality, your interests that you think people would be surprised to know relating to your childhood?
Um, I think one of the courses that I took was the AP US Government class with Jay Seidenstein and Ethan Abbott. And that really inspired me to get involved with like local politics, getting involved with the Republican Party at the time, and you know, um, doing sign waving and also door knocking. And I ended up taking that, and I was president of my college Republicans, and was a delegate in California, to the state party convention for about 3 years in a row. When I come back to Hawaii, I ended up being a delegate to the Republican National Convention. And I was a delegate for Bush, for Romney, and Trump, all of which, are very different, different kind of characters, and as we know. But it was a great experience, because people like and respected me, and it teaches you leadership qualities.
I asked you about lowlights in seventh, eighth grade. Were there any lowlights from high school?
Lowlights. Oh man. Um, Lowlights. Um, I didn't like the fact that we had to wear shoes, and they were very strict about giving demerits out for people that didn't wear shoes, and also for leaving campus to go places, even when they didn't have class and they wanted even to go across the street back to their home and then return, when they had class. I thought it was a little quite strict. Oh, and I wanted to share this. One of the, I guess you want to call it a interesting phenomenon that happened. My senior prom, my I asked a girl to the senior prom, and she committed to coming with me. Well, 3 days before, or maybe about a week before, she says, "You know what? I can't come to the prom with my parents. My mother has grounded me. You've got to call her and explain the situation." That I had asked this girl way before she got grounded. And I said, "Well, what did you get grounded for?" She says, "Don't ask, but just call my mother and explain, because they're not letting me out of the house." And, this was good for me because it's the first time I've ever had to engage an adult and say, you have to let her come to the prom with me. Because the mother would be punishing me as well because I couldn't get a date, at such short notice. And so when I called the mother and I was explaining, she says, "Well, I have to talk to my husband." I said, "Okay, you know, but I'll call you back in a couple of days." And when I called her back and she says, okay, um, are you sure you have nobody else to go with? I said, yeah. She says, okay, well, okay, she can come, but she has to come back right after the prom. And so she let her daughter go with me. And then we went to the prom, had a wonderful time. But every hour on the hour, the girl had to go to the payphone and call her mother. And so one of the things that I did is I brought the mother a rose when I picked up the date, and she was really pleased about that. But
That's a strong move.
well, I wanted to send the right message because I was deathly afraid I wouldn't be able to go to my senior prom. I'd have no date. And so I'm very thankful to that woman for listening to me, as a professional. I didn't yell or scream at her. I didn't beg her. I just laid it out professionally. And I said who I was, where I lived, and that, I'd asked her daughter out, and that I'd heard she'd been grounded. And the mother said, yeah, she's in a heap of trouble. I said, that's my understanding, but I don't want to interfere in family affairs. It's, especially when it's not anything that I'm involved in. And she agreed. But I said, again, you're going to be punishing me. You're grounding me, so I can't get a date to my own prom, you know. And I think, again, Punahou teaches you, you stand up for yourself. And so people are going to be comfortable with you personally and professionally. These things have all helped me in my personal and professional career out here, which is very, very competitive. And you will fight to the nth degree, for anything out here. And you have to stand up and you have to fight for yourself. And people look at that and they respect that. So.